In this session, which is the last of the sessions where we'll be concluding with the PST skills training, which is the goal setting and the imagery, we have two eminent sports psychologists who will give us practical knowledge and practical their perspective about how they have applied these skills into their working with their athletes. So Priyanka, one of the renowned sports psychologists who's
Thank
also
you,
gone with the Indian team as their sports psychologist. Thank you for being here. So my first question to you would be, psychological skills training or mental skills training is a very important concept in sports. Today there's been a trend into many like technology based exercise and technology based training. You as a psychologist have worked on these platforms. Can you explain or give your insight into how these programs work, the technology based programs?
Right. So basically, I mean, I really like the fact that, we are able to use technology in order to teach and train our athletes on the various psychological skills. So be it, like I have used relaxation
Okay.
using technology, be it using biofeedback, or sometimes I've also used certain eye tracking tools and techniques so that attention and focus of the athletes can be at the predominant level.
Okay.
And apart from that, even to help athletes with their reaction times, which are so essential.
Yeah, very
and
important. Yeah.
very important for the sport, right? So be it training their hand reaction time or the foot reaction time. So using technology has been extremely important and essential. And also these days, one of the biggest benefit of using technology has also been that you can apply it in a very multicultural setup.
Okay. Okay.
Because also what happens is, especially when we are working with athletes where the language becomes a barrier,
Right. Right.
assessments of certain kind cannot be used.
Right. That's right. That's a language is a big barrier.
Yes. So
Language.
basically, I think we are also fortunate to have multiple technology based assessment which the athletes can definitely use and train.
Right.
And of course, one of the essential feature is that even if you want to train athletes on probably how to manage your stress, it's very like animated way, or it's in a very
Right.
game.
Right.
Yeah.
The players get involved in it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So they have fun when they actually engage. It's very engaging when
Right.
you use technology
Right. Right. Yeah.
based.
Like so, it's like a virtual kind of reality for them. Yeah.
Yes, they get to interact. They actually see the performance, and it's not like these assessments that I have particularly used. They're not actually talking about. It's all skill based, like skill training based. It's not like you're bad or you're poor. It's basically like, okay, you're at this level now, you can focus on becoming at this next level.
Okay, improving yourself to the next level.
Yes, all the time. And be it
Okay.
even focus or attention, it says that this is currently your skill, and basically in the next few sessions you'll see them improving from that particular level.
Okay.
And also what happens is the same thing, it's translated into the sports and performance on the field to a large extent.
So what they are seeing through the technology can be like transferred into their training and the real life training.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How accessible are these new technology based learnings for athletes? Like if an individual, like if you are a psychologist, like you need to acquire them. So
yeah, first of all, I think they're pretty expensive. An organization can definitely afford to have these equipments. But otherwise, individually, if a psychologist really wants to procure them, it becomes a very
it's an
huge
expensive
challenge.
affair. It's quite
So
expensive.
then that becomes a drawback.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
So maybe like when you have access with respect to the organizations or private clinics, some of them they tend to have it.
Yeah.
But with private consultant psychologists, having access to them is extremely limited.
I think biofeedback, some of the clinics etc. have where you can have access to them. Okay. So now moving on to goal setting, right? I mean, nothing happens or no performance happens without goals, right?
Yeah.
And you have worked with the teams and you have, when we talk about a team, we are always looking at a team goal.
Right.
So can you give some example of where you have worked with individual goal, with individual players on their goals and also with the team? Any example could be highlighted or some case you could give us?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, when we actually look at working with individuals on their goals, somewhere I have seen that, even when I'm working with individual, let's say that they want to say that, what, I want to be more confident when there is an audience.
Right.
If that is the goal, somewhere it also gives me an insight towards how is the support system and communication on the team.
Right.
So any individual's issue for me I look at it like, okay, what in the team is actually happening?
Okay.
That this particular individual is going through something like this. So
Right.
it gives me an opportunity to work through the individual's issues even and look at it systemically and work with the team.
Right.
So, somewhere if an individual is feeling scared of having an audience, it somewhere also shows and talks about the team having the same sort of fear.
Right.
So, as a team, if I address it and also work with the individual,
Right.
it can benefit both ways.
Right.
It could be something like, whose feedback are you going to take?
Right.
Whose opinion is important, because some of these players also get information messages on their social media saying that, you did not play well, you did not do
right.
this.
I know.
So
Yeah,
it becomes extremely challenging, for them
Right.
to manage everybody's expectations.
Right. So when you work with a team, are the players all involved in developing the team goal, or is it just the coach who does it? Like as a psychologist, how do you intervene? Or
This is a very interesting question, because I feel that, sometimes the coach gives the way and
Right.
says that, this is the goal that we can envision and move forward.
right,
And then the individuals, make it their own.
right.
Yeah.
Internalizing.
Yeah, they internalize it and they believe that, okay, this is our team goal, this is our vision, this is what we need to have.
Right.
And also they have tangible goals. Like, for example, we've made so many errors the
Right.
last time.
Right.
So we need to focus on reducing the number of fouls, or probably we need to look at scoring more goals, or basically the goal.
Reducing miss passes.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of
statistically they are all
yeah.
available to the players. So
Right.
those are some of the goals that they look at. And apart from that, even mentally they look at, how can we build more confident? How can we communicate more on the team? So they
Right.
become the goals.
Yeah,
and these
right.
are some things which we practice on the field and then go execute them in the competition.
Yeah, so these are very important in teams, right? Communication,
Yeah.
coordination. That also becomes a goal, right? Because sometimes you miss passing to a crucial player,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you take an attempt, or vice versa can happen.
Correct. I remember, working with this one particular coach, because we found out that, communication was a huge barrier in that particular team.
So, right,
What he did was, during their practice sessions, it was no more just passing,
right,
without talking. Everybody had to, whenever they're passing, they had to say a particular thing.
Word
and when
or a
they're,
phrase.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
they're receiving, they had to say certain things. So,
Right.
and then that really helped them,
Yeah.
with the communication on the field.
It can't be a silent game, right?
Yeah,
It has to
you
be
have
like
to
noise,
talk.
make some noise kind of a.
Yeah, and that is something that
Yeah.
was very helpful for the players.
I think it's fun working with a team and also playing as a part of a team, right? It's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So also I think psychologists really have to make it fun for the players, because
Right.
sport is very dynamic. So as much as we make psychology fun for them, make it more activity based for them, they will
Right.
really enjoy and apply,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the theoretical application of all the principles that we have learned
Yeah.
needs to be made more practical.
Practical, yeah, that's right. There's a lot of difference between theory and practical,
Yeah,
right? Though
yeah.
we use the theory
Hmm,
to integrate it into the practical, it
Yeah.
has to be made a lot of fun.
Correct.
Yeah. So we look at the next skill that we have been discussing now in the last module is about imagery, right? I mean, imagery is now the cognitive tool that is used all
Yes,
over.
Yes.
So can you give some incidents about how you have worked? See, there are two things involved when we look at a team. You have the team doing imagery together and an individual also working on certain specific skills. So can you give some example of where you use team imagery for the team and where it's benefited them?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think even at a team, when I have worked with a team, I have worked on individual players' imagery building skills.
Okay.
Like, for example, there was a study which we did on one of the, group of players.
Right.
Wherein, the script, we developed the script by
Right.
working with the coach, so
Right.
that we understand, for example, let's say we took volleyball. So for every position, what was the skill required.
Right.
You know,
Right.
what are the
Like a setter, libero,
yeah,
all, yeah.
every
so,
single position wise we got the script made. And in the same way, even let's say for hockey,
Right.
right, for example, a forward, midfielder, goal keeper, they all had different scripts.
Right.
So that was something that we would ensure that they are relaxed, and then we would read out the imagery script. And at the same time, initially it was about guided imagery, wherein we would speak about it and then they would imagine. Later it was more about what are you watching, what are you observing.
Right. So what are you seeing?
Yeah,
Okay.
what are you seeing in your head?
Right.
So asking the athletes to close their eyes and probably talking about
Right.
what are the things that they're actually imagining, and then how vivid and how clear
Right.
is the image. Can they change the image? Can they control
the image, yeah.
Yeah, so
because they learnt it in theory, right, about vividness and controllability.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
it becomes that, are you able to see the color of the jersey that you actually wear?
Yeah,
So
true, very true.
all those skills becomes extremely important. And the next thing that we also do with respect to team is, let's say we are having a group session, having a common imagery that they can actually practice for the competition.
Right.
Like for example, imagine yourself being very confident. Imagine yourself like, you have all the power and you're going out there and competing.
Right.
So these are some of the
Like
ways
doing
in
a
which-
victory lap, or scoring a goal.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's a team effort when
celebrating.
you score a goal, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
when we actually bring in those emotions, to the imagery, the body feels extremely good.
Right.
And the players know how they feel and what they would want to achieve
Right.
from the imagery.
Right. Very true. That's very true. So in your experience, do most of the players and the athletes and all, do they prefer guided imagery more compared to doing the imagery, like doing it on their own? What is your experience?
Right. I think that guided imagery is something that they would prefer initially,
yeah.
because if they don't know, I think some of them I've come across who say that they do practice imagery,
Okay.
but they don't do it in a very specific manner or stepwise, like the way
Right,
we
right.
guide
Yeah,
them through
yeah.
it. But once they work with us, they know, okay, this is the way I need to go through the
Right,
imagery.
right.
This
Like to
is the
create
spec
an
thing.
opening and then introduce the skill
Yeah.
rather than just go to the
Yeah,
skill.
yeah.
So-
Otherwise, they just, and also we talk in terms of, take the whole time. Like, let's say if you're working with a high jumper or, any particular sports person, we
Right.
make sure that the same time they take there to go
Right,
out
real
there,
time, the real
Yeah.
time, right? Not in slow motion or
Yeah,
anything.
so take the same amount of time to finish it, or be it a swimmer for that matter. How much time are you taking to finish the
right,
lap?
right.
So we do the imagery for that particular length.
Okay. So this now, the question that I would like to ask you is everybody fluent about imagery, right? I mean, are all players able to image? Like, I'm sure you would have, some athletes or
Yeah,
players who
yeah.
would find it difficult. So how would you deal with these people?
I would say that not everybody, will be able to imagine
Right.
very clearly. Some
Right.
people do struggle with it, and they say that, I can't imagine, I struggle with it.
Right,
So basically, I think understanding what is the best way that they learn
right,
becomes important, because I remember this one particular player that we were actually working with as a sports psychology team.
right,
And no matter what was done, he was not able to imagine, and he was the only person on the team who was not able to execute the skills, and the
Oh,
coach
okay.
was able to actually see that everybody else performed exceptionally well.
right,
And but then the one who was actually supervising me, the psychologist,
right,
she actually told me that maybe it's important, let's look into his learning style.
right.
So basically, when we actually saw the learning style, we saw that it was not visual or auditory. His learning style was read write.
Oh, okay.
So for him, then we asked him to start writing.
Oh, okay.
Every single thing
That he, about his skill or whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
also, what
interesting.
we found was he was very good at math.
Okay,
Yeah, and he said that it's because I used to keep practicing the math,
Right.
and that's how I got better.
right,
And then the more he ended up writing what he does with his sports specific skill,
right.
it was extraordinary, because he was able to pick things very easily even for his sport.
Oh, right.
And the coach was extremely surprised that what actually happened, because 2 weeks back he was at a certain level, and right now
he's elevated
Yeah.
himself, right? I mean, his skills have improved.
Yeah, so I think for us to know exactly what the reason is for for probably some people not uh, being able to use a certain skill. I
Right,
think
right.
understanding the root cause becomes extremely important,
Yeah.
and it's very different for different people.
Yeah. So, like, this helps us understand that there are a lot of individual differences when we talk about players, right? Just like
Yeah.
how all the 5 fingers in the hand are not the same.
Hmm.
Similarly, a group of players in a team will not be the same.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
as
yeah.
sports psychologists, I think we need to be particularly, mindful of this, that, each player is different. So,
Yeah.
whether you're designing a goal setting program or an imagery program, it should be custom made to them.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So we've had a very great discussion with Priyanka, and she's given us so many insights because she's worked with so many teams and so many players. So thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thank you,
And for
ma'am.
all your inputs. Thank you. And welcome to this session. In the previous session, we had psychologist Priyanka talk to us. And now we have renowned psychologist Dr. Chaitanya. Chaitanya, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dr. Chaitanya needs no introduction, has been working with teams and individual athletes at a very, very elite level. So, in the previous sessions that we have had, we have discussed a lot about the theoretical concepts about goal setting and about imagery. So, we would like to hear from you about the practical applications and what are the challenges and
Right.
the advantages of working with teams.
Done.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So my very first question would be about goal setting. Like, you have worked with teams, and when we look at a team, we look at probably like a goal that we have to win. Of course, every team wants to win, right?
Right.
So how challenging is it to set a team goal, and how do you work on setting individual goals for the players?
Yeah, I think thank you. That's a great question to start with.
Okay.
So something that I do, especially with teams, is my first base is I try to get to know each individual player, because it's the entire group of them which constitutes the team.
Yes.
And then with the leadership group we decide on the, let's say, a culture session for
Yeah, right.
because by then I've also built some rapport up with them, and then we go, let's say, whether that's a national team, whether that's a state or it's a league,
Right.
this season, right, where are we and what is it that we're looking at,
Right.
like
Right.
it's, for example, if it's a new team coming in, right,
Right.
to set something like, okay, we're going to go win, that's like too big,
Yeah,
too huge,
I know, right? Yeah.
If you win, that's great.
Yeah.
but the point
You
is,
want to know where you stand. Actually.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then also we don't want to like shake them up by going, okay, like the aim is to win, which I
Right.
think that's where you will see teams crumbling.
Right.
So to to understand, and also I always look at, like, is this leadership team, at least at this point of time, are they open?
Right.
Because then your job is half done.
Right.
And then I'll give you this example. It was one of the national teams, it was a major event. Okay, it was actually during qualifiers, Olympic qualifiers, and previously we hadn't done so well, and the team came together. We had some conflict, we had a lot of things,
Right.
but it really came together because what we built up was qualifiers,
Right.
like to really qualify. And it was a team on fire. Just the way we played till then was insane, like immensely wonderful.
Right. Full coordinated and the team,
Brilliant, okay.
working as a team.
And
Yeah.
came together, and that was the first part. Okay, so we did really well, we qualified, and then I think somewhere after that the team slacked a little.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the point, so what I'm trying to establish is, what is it that we set in the beginning, and also it becomes very important to go next milestone.
Right.
So then, of course, thankfully we were able to like recognize and come back.
Right.
But you could see this distinct way in which they played, like, right? So
Right.
what was sitting was qualifiers.
Right.
And then we had to, so then you redefine the goal. So I think
Right.
that becomes paramount.
Right.
Yeah,
Because also you're working with such elite levels, right? It's like the importance they attach to that event, right? That is something that is very,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm playing Olympic qualifiers, or I'm going for World Championship. So that has its, stigma and.
Oh,
kind of-
definitely.
yeah.
And to come to what happened during Rio, right? Like, I wasn't working with any of the teams. I was more with the individual. But Rio Olympics, the more we saw athletes, what you're saying, I'm trying to connect, was I'm going to go for gold.
Right.
And I'm like, and I was like, oh God.
Yeah, I
And till
know.
Sakshi broke that jinx, we
Right.
did really badly, right? And I remember Mr. Prakash Padukone actually said, he said, what's really happening? Why are, players not psychologically prepared?
Right.
And that's, I think, a very, important aspect to look into, is because a lot of players just go, okay, fine, I'm training. But
Right.
Olympics, Asian Games,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
also know that there's a preparation which is needed here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And
I think it's a different mindset, right?
Yes.
To be playing at that elite
Yeah,
level.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's I've quoted Bindra a few times, but
Right.
I think he's a very, very important example, because I also feel like emulating someone, having someone as a role model is very good when you're training.
Yeah.
But as you're going closer to competition,
Right.
this is your opponent.
Yeah, right.
And he's the same. So that's something I do, ma'am, in imagery.
Right.
As like when you cut off, this person is XYZ, he
Right.
or she is just like any other.
Right.
And you deserve to be there.
Right.
You did not jump from being, let's say, a club level player or a state level to international. No,
Right.
you worked your
Yeah.
way and you deserve. And I think that is something which is very, very important.
Yeah, true. Very, very, very true.
Yeah.
So since you've brought up the topic of imagery, right?
One of
I
my
know,
favorites.
Yeah. And I know that you have been working on the champion mindset and the flow state. I heard you in the conferences. So
Yes.
how does one actually, develop an imagery script for having a champion mindset, right?
Yeah.
Is there any like a mantra or something? Or
I wish. I really wish. I want to give this example. Okay, this is a swimmer who's doing very well, and
Okay.
I've known this athlete player from a while, like even when he started. So and it's a beautiful example for imagery. So I think it's your self-talk and your narrative becomes very important. Okay,
Right,
so
right.
this was a guy who, the state tournament, right? He and I with the younger ones, I use a little bit of art and
I know,
right?
to make it interesting and
Yeah, and sometimes it's also good because when you let them just do freehand, right? Like you also tap into their unconscious a little,
Right,
because
right.
if not consciously, what they tell you is just tip of
very
the
limited.
iceberg,
Yeah.
And he drew exactly, he drew the, there was a pool, he's swimming, and and then there's the podium, and
Right.
he's standing. Exactly what happened. State tournament.
Very
Exactly.
nice. So being there even before competing,
right?
Yeah.
And then the nationals, we kind of went, can I also connect this to a little to goal setting?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, and then the state and nationals, I saw him, right? And this is a guy who's, with younger players, right? I love working because you don't have to do so much of unconditioning with them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
And with him, he was someone who would like clearly set his mind.
Right.
And what happened was, couple of the events, right? Like he hardly gave any difference, like between your current goal and the target goal.
Right.
So
in
I
terms
said,
of his timing. Yeah.
right? Because it's this is where your goal setting and
Right,
imagery comes
right,
together. And
right.
then I said, what's happening? And then he said, oh, but this is going to be, I'm going to be beating X's record, okay?
Right.
And that's where we went with, so the narrative over here was like what we were talking, oh my God, this is someone.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I went with where your form is,
Right.
and what do you want? And then
Right.
he went on to beat 2 of, the national records.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I think, so understanding what is my player,
Right.
and typically if we've got him or her earlier, and what is the narrative, right, becomes very important for
Yeah.
me.
That's true. That's
So
very
then
true.
you build that into what would be the imagery that would actually help this individual.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what one works for one doesn't work for the other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, you're doing, let's say, 10 minutes of imagery morning, night. The rest of the day, if you're playing this catastrophe model in your head,
Right.
you're actually imagining the worst, right?
Right,
So
right.
I
Very
think
true,
that
yeah.
also becomes very important to hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
So like when we are talking about individual players, right? I'm sure it's a lot of challenge to get the person to even visualize sometimes. Like some people are resistant to
Yeah.
kind of mental training. So can you highlight of some challenges you face during, working with, you can look at young athletes and also a little bit of sub-elite and elite athletes. What are the challenges like?
Yeah, I think, see, when you work, let's say, with a team, with an academy, then,
Right.
or even like a parental, has, referral has come.
Right.
So the individual hasn't come to you by themselves, right?
Right.
So you first have to really make your way.
Right.
And I think something that I always ask is, I'm like, how can I help you?
Right.
That's my like deal breaker.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Because nowadays kids pretty much know, right? What they want to work on.
Yeah. And also, like, like there was this one player, and I think, if I'm not wrong, they had previously gone to another person, maybe it wasn't a sports psychologist. Sometimes, that's
Counselors or
yeah,
something.
counselor. And I think, it's a little different ball game, right?
Yeah.
So he was a little hesitant, and then I said, okay, so I prefer long term, like at least 5 to 10 sessions.
Yeah, of course.
Of course magic happens sometimes,
Yeah.
for a session, but then if you want to go into the depths, it really has to be.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, are you ready to
Invest so much of time, yeah.
to bring in, will you bring yourself for the 5 sessions?
Right.
Because if you don't, then there's very little I can do.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I think honest communication really,
Yeah,
really
important,
matters.
yeah.
I think that's very, very vital.
Yeah.
So that's one example. When it comes to teams, right? I like to actually first meet them for the team building, team bonding.
Okay.
And then you slowly introduce some concepts.
Okay.
Like, let's say when you're working at a very elite level, right? There's the who's who.
Yeah.
There is, you can't go talk motivation
Yeah,
quote
yeah, of
setting
course, of course.
to
They're
them.
very basic, right?
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then you also have, like, I remember once I was working with one of these teams, okay, and this very senior player, he said, Doc, how are you going to do this group session? Because, like, he was in the field for so
Yeah.
long. And so then I said, can you help me? Give me some ideas. And that was like, like, I was like, what do you think can help? What do you think this team needs? So I actually rope in, the senior players.
Right. That's a good way, right?
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
the culture of the team.
Exactly.
Their understanding, that's...
Yeah. And also, it's that trickle down effect,
Right.
like when and I always identify, also if you identify like who are the like influences, there are going to be one or two who are very,
truly informally influenced,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
So if you can bring them on board,
Right.
and then once I remember asking, I'm like, I want you guys to introduce and have some fun in the play in the beginning, and then we'll build it. So what happens? Oh, what, she's accepted. Right. So I think that's one. But I also want to give an example at a very elite level. This was a young player. Now he's doing very well. I mean, he was one of the younger players.
Okay.
He came from a place which probably there was no psychology. He hadn't heard.
Right.
Extremely resistant, but he needed support. So what I would do there is I would like look at what does this individual need. And without giving out details as such, but like I would tell the coach, like he was very fond of one of the coaches, like coach, this way, channel his energy in this will help him.
Right.
And so that actually worked.
Right.
Because even for us, right,
Yeah.
we are part of the team, right?
I
It
know.
doesn't matter whether it's come from us or me
Yeah.
but the point is this individual getting helped?
Right. I
Right.
know. So he's getting help from someone who significantly he
Can
looks up to,
influence.
right?
Yeah.
Through
And
your, via media.
Info. Exactly. Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
But I like it what you told Dr. Chaitanya, that about, that having a person in a session, like to work with them for a period of 5 to 10 sessions is very important.
Definitely.
Because as you know, we have no magic pill, right?
Right.
There's so much of training that is involved. How I wish we could give an ibuprofen and say tomorrow, like, you'll be like...
You're right.
Yeah.
Because that's what you hear, no? Like
Yeah.
a lot of times parent, I know you're like, a parent of like sporting kids. But one thing, you get to hear is psychs is motivate my child. And sometimes, trust me, depending on my mood, I've really said, sir, I'm not a motivator.
I know. No, many times people ask me, I say, your kid is just fine. The problem is with you, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's one of our challenges,
Yeah, that
right?
is one
Like
of
with the
yeah.
younger players especially.
That is
Yes.
very, very, they're like so overpowering and overbearing. So, I remember, like I told Priyanka also, my younger one played tennis, and the coach used to always tell me, don't become a tennis mom.
Yeah, it's like the soccer mom,
Yeah,
right?
soccer
Yes,
mom,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the things I tell it, I mean, I don't do that much of younger player work now, but when I do is, I like to get at least one, if not both the parents, and you really see where's, what's the family dynamics.
yeah.
And they're going like, listen, sometimes you have to, with the best intention, pull back or undo this or give this
Yeah.
kid a little more responsibility.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
you'll really see them bloom.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah, definitely.
So
yeah.
the parenting itself is a big other discussion, right?
Oh yes,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
so.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that also brings me to asking you one of the last questions is, how do you image to get into a flow state, right? I mean, you helped a lot of athletes, so I'm sure all who are listening would want to know that about the flow state. Like, what kind of imagery can someone use?
Yeah, so I think, I'm also training to be a Jungian analyst, and I
yes.
work with elephants, right?
Right.
I'll bring that in because I feel understanding your athlete, and also, is this person in a playful, like, what, to quote Dr. Winnicott, what he says is, what you need in therapy and session is a playful attitude,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's you don't solve a problem by doing it the same way, but it's that play instinct and creativity and imagination.
Right.
So I actually play with my athletes. So when I
Right.
say plays, I'm quite playful in my sessions.
Right.
So which doesn't mean that I don't do work or I'm
Yeah,
not serious,
yeah.
but
You're
but
seriously playful.
yeah. Yeah, that's a nice way. So to actually go, and it's tapping in one of the things I think which is I've picked up in these whatever years is, to look at when this person is describing what's the story behind,
Right.
and also what, where's that little click, where's
Right.
that little, shift in their body language.
Right.
I'll give you this young golfer's example, which I think would be really good to probably wrap it up as well.
Okay.
Is, he was this guy would always be in his head.
Okay.
And like we said, the Trishanku state.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he would be in that. And he was this, I'm scared of psychology, I'm scared of everything. And his body language also would be like that. One of the times I took him through his best performance, and he starts off going on a tangent.
Wow.
And then, he says, my best friend was caddying, and he said, you can do it. And this guy didn't know anything about, his best
The
friend caddy didn't know anything.
yeah, except carry the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but he believed in this person. And he
Right.
said, Ma'am, I had so much fun, and then I went on to do well.
Right.
And now that's a
So,
cue.
yeah, right.
So I'm like, how can you bring this? So what works for him is a playful attitude.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, and then, this guy, I see him the next time, and he's like, Ma'am, and I had this $1 million smile, I was like, he's like, yeah, I'm not sitting on the fence.
Right.
And that's when, then in the next tournament, he was like, he used to hymn songs and poems, and, I was doing all that. I was in that place which flowed.
Right.
So
I know.
to really look at what brings me to my flow.
Right.
But also that doesn't mean I push everyone to go like, okay, become playful.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah,
might
I know.
want to be
Very
but
serious or very, like,
focused. And,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he was focused in a different way.
I know.
Yeah.
But his approach was different.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that is the key.
Right.
What's my athlete asking? Like, for example, a lot of times what I see, like, there was this other young athlete who was extremely playful, and she would get serious.
Right.
So
Oh.
she was not performing, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
I know. Because you're not your natural
exactly,
sense,
right? So tapping into that, I think that's one of the ingredients
Yeah.
I have figured in,
Yeah, I
bringing
know.
athletes
No,
to
that's
that
very
flow state.
insightful because, it tells you to bring out your real self if you want to be in a flow state.
Yeah,
or if you want to
exactly.
be like, just have a great time in your practice
Yeah.
or in your match, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
So thank you so much, Chaitanya, for being here. And I think it was very insightful. I think all of you enjoyed.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you.